As always, I'm your host, Daniel, with my father here, Jerry. Say hi, Dad.
Hello.
This time we're obviously doing Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark. Um, I just want to point out something because I know we just did E.T. last time. This movie came out a year before E.T., which means some executive at M&M's probably saw this movie before rejecting E.T. M&M's use in E.T. I just want to point that out. Uh, just because we talked about how we still couldn't believe that decision after the movies Spielberg made.
Yeah.
But uh, anyway, obviously, we both have seen this movie quite a few times before. This was my first time ever seeing it on the big screen. It was actually the first movie they showed back after they got the drive-in fixed up. It was their big opener, which we had some people there for. And the short answer is yes, it still really holds up well, wouldn't you
Yeah.
say?
Yes, I would.
Um, all the special effects, for the most part, still work really well. All the action works really well. It has really good sound effects, I thought,
Yeah.
for like the hits and stuff, and all the explosions.
Hmm.
Uh, Obviously, this movie is hugely influential, even though it was influenced by a whole number of things. But one of the things that I like actually, and I think this talks about how well it is, with all the
Hmm.
stuff over the years that have copied it and has parodied it.
Yeah.
The scenes like the boulder chasing him, opening of the Ark of the Covenant, the fight with the mechanic, still really work,
Yeah.
even with all the stuff that has copied it.
Hmm.
Uh, which I guess I was actually somewhat suspecting it because, as I've talked about, I've seen this a number of times before, and it's still considered a classic for a reason. But one of the things I didn't remember in it is quite how much slapstick there was in humor in general.
Yes.
Because I think kind of movies have since kind of gone a slightly different way with their humor. It's more in the dialogue than the scenes itself. You still
Hmm.
have a few of that, but especially I think when I think back to like the Marvel movies and stuff, uh, it's far more their dialogue that's funny and the action scenes that's serious than kind of a combination of the both.
Hmm.
Uh, and I found that pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Um, just because that's something that they've actually kind of went away from is some of the more slapsticky action. I mean, you still get it from time to time, but it's mostly the dialogue that's humorous anymore.
Hmm.
Uh, I was gonna say, I mean, I still think like John Wick does a lot with the slapstick stuff. I think in the action scenes itself, maybe not quite to the extent as this one, but I mean, you still had like in the more recent one, the scene where he hit the horse and it kicked the guy and stuff.
Yeah. But there. I mean, this one has a lot of crazy different action scenes in it
Hmm.
throughout. That all of them seem to work reasonably well.
Yes, they all work well and they all hold up relatively well. The special effects in them, in particular.
Yes.
And again, I think it goes to the time when they were all practical. There wasn't any real CGI. Um,
Hmm.
they were all filmed well uh, in it. But and I think one of the things that they do really well in this movie is they really use the environment for the action scenes.
Hmm.
There's
Yes.
it's like even in some of the more traditional ones, like when they're in a car chase at the one point, I mean, he's crawling all over the truck.
Yeah.
He's inside and outside the truck. He's using the whip when he gets out of it and is
Yeah.
being dragged by it. Which I mean, I thought the way that they use the whip in it is really well done and really
Yeah.
creative. Uh, which you get
Hmm.
on early.
Yes. Actually, uh, Harrison Ford took lessons to use the whip,
That's
and he actually had a bad wrist and had to rehabilitate it so he could use the whip well.
funny. Well, I know, like, well, obviously one of the most famous scenes in the movie is when the guy pulls out his sword and he swings it around and then he just shoots him.
Yes.
That was like originally going to be a fight scene, but Harrison Ford was sick, so he just kind of did that to end the scene.
Yeah.
And they liked it so much they kept it in.
Mhm.
Uh,
They had a lot of trouble with shooting, people
yeah,
getting sick and things like that,
yeah.
and
Well,
they had a lot of trouble. Like Spielberg couldn't get enough
mhm.
uh, snakes and stuff.
That's a interesting problem, not having enough snakes
Yeah.
and not terrifying. But yeah, again, one of the things with like the snakes and stuff is they're all really there, so you don't have any of the kind of wonkiness of the CGI of them not having weight or just
Yeah.
it looks like there's an actual snake pit there, which works really well again. But I mean, it doesn't surprise me that because they shot a lot on location, I'm sure, and
Yes, it was
uh,
almost all shot on location. That was
mhm,
the other big thing about it. I noticed in reading about it. It seems like they had a lot of trouble, controversy that actually made the movie better. In that they all Lucas,
mhm.
Spielberg, and the writer. I forget
Lawrence
what.
Kasdan.
Yeah, all wanted different things
That's
in the movie. In fact, they had a hard time agreeing on what type of character Jones would have.
hmm
And when they first started off with Smith, but they decided to go against it because of it was first going to be Smith because oh god, I can't think of the guy's name. Uh, Steve McQueen
hmm
used Nevada Smith, so they named him Indiana Jones,
hmm.
and that was really interesting. And it
hmm
was also interesting that Jones wasn't their first choice.
You mean Ford?
Yeah, and in fact, even Jones had some. Uh, yeah, Harrison Ford had some
hmm
misgivings about
hmm
playing that after he played Han Solo.
Yeah,
In fact, asked in his contract to get it, that he could rewrite the dialogue so it didn't sound like Han Solo.
yeah. I mean, you can see a bit of. I mean, he certainly you can see a bit of Han Solo's
Yeah,
kind of swagger in him,
yeah,
still. Uh, but I mean, he, uh, I know like some of the more bizarre things, like a lot of the stuff was influenced by like Scrooge McDuck and the old DuckTales comics,
yeah,
because Scrooge McDuck originally was a treasure hunter.
yeah,
That's how he made his fortune. I know that's actually where the boulder scene came from.
yeah,
At least I shouldn't say they took it from that, but that was at least something that was in one of them.
yeah.
I don't know if it's ever been confirmed if they saw that and liked it or, but yeah, I
The,
mean, Indiana Jones. I mean, you can see a lot of influence of obviously like just B movie heroes in him.
yeah.
Like you have like there's a certain degree of James Bond in him. There's a certain degree
Well,
of uh, like Han Solo, certainly, which I
yeah.
realize they both they worked on, but uh,
And Ford wasn't the first choice. Their first choice was Tom Selleck and Jeff Bridges. And Bridges turned him down, and Tom Selleck had Magnum PI came up, and it got green lit, and he had to go to that rather than Raiders of the Lost Ark.
it's interesting because uh, I mean it's always interesting those things because obviously I who was it that was originally going to be Han Solo, but
Yeah,
turned him down for Annie Hall. Oh, I'm
yeah,
blanking on his name. But again, obviously a Harrison Ford role that is iconically Harrison Ford, and
yeah,
he embodies so perfectly in the role.
yeah. And the woman, they had chosen a lot of them, but the woman impressed them when she did her screen test, and
Yeah,
that's why they picked her Ellen.
yeah,
They
uh,
were thinking about Deborah Winger,
mhm.
but then they went with Ellen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Ellen's so great in it.
Yeah,
I mean, she's obviously the scene where she's introduced is great and kind of goes against the traditional B movie heroine of the
yeah,
damsel in distress.
yeah,
I mean, she's sitting there getting drunk
yeah,
and beating a guy in the. She shoots the guns. She hits saves him a few times. It's the guy with the bottle.
Yeah.
Uh, like yeah, she gets captured, but she's not in she's very competent.
Yes.
I mean, she's someone that isn't a like she clearly isn't like as averse to action as Harrison Indiana Jones is,
Yeah.
but she's not going to just sit there and stand there. She's going to grab the gun. She's going to she obviously gets in the cockpit and as the plane's spinning shoots the guys.
Yeah.
Uh somewhat of 180 and obviously in the next movie it's a complete 180.
Yeah.
But no, she's just a fun character to begin with. And I think that's one of the reasons this movie works so well is that all the characters are really fun characters.
Yeah.
You obviously have Indiana Jones, but even like I mean the two villains in it. I guess the three main villains: the Nazi leader, the creepy Nazi guy that like has his hand burnt and stuff. I can't remember either their names, and his rival archaeologist
Yes.
are all a lot of fun and all like have somewhat different motives of doing it. Like the one guy's just this nasty sadist. The other guy's obviously doing it for the Fuhrer, and the rival archaeologist even has his own misgivings about things.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't. He's clearly in it for the money,
Yeah.
but he doesn't really like. He's not comfortable with a lot of the stuff they're doing, which I thought was actually really interesting.
Yeah.
On that, because you kind of have these. Go ahead.
I think he's one of the more excellent characters in it.
Yeah.
The rival archaeologist. He plays that almost to the T. I think some of his driving force was just to get Ford.
Yeah, and that's clear because I think there's obviously a rivalry between the two.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty vicious one.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a friendly rivalry at all.
Yeah.
And I think that's and I like how that plays into it. But I even like I don't know like his friend when they're at the dig site and stuff. The guy he's working with is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
The captain of the boat.
Yeah.
And stuff, and they're all relatively intelligent characters. They're not stupid. They're not just kind of wackety wackety. Like the captain of the boat, like lies to the Nazis and makes them believe that they killed Harrison Ford, but they didn't kill the woman because she's worth money.
Yeah.
And stuff. So they all have like all the characters are a bit. They're a bit more like they're not as like noble as a lot of the other ones and stuff over the time. They're a bit more smart and deceitful than the others. They actually feel like people that would survive this kind of stuff or have a good chance at it because they don't just do stupid things. They're just they think and they're clearly in the position they are because they got there by outsmarting and outplaying.
The Spielberg, one of the misgivings he had was about the U-boat thing, where the U-boat where he takes off gets on the U-boat.
Yeah.
He did not like that. It did not. He didn't think that was. But he sort of left it in, and he wanted a better U-boat scene, but they couldn't come up with it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's true because you wonder how he's going to get inside the U-boat once he swims over.
Yeah, well, I mean, the U-boat doesn't need to necessarily submerge or a number of other things.
Yeah.
I know that was one of it. I know, like, I've heard of like some other scenes that they never really figured out or got left on the cutting room floor of it over the years.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, I don't know if they've ever like. I guess they never kind of. I guess the terms George Lucas did or whatever, like how we talked about in E.T., where they added some stuff with CGI or anything, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I think that's been smart. They never really like toned it down or anything. Because obviously, like one of the things that makes the movie is some of the more horror elements, like the face melting, some of the blood and guts of it. And I think that's one of the things that makes it just a bit more fun and a bit more entertaining, is that level of kind of horror element.
Yeah.
Like obviously the first thing one of the first people you see die has been impaled by a bunch of spears, and there's a bit of blood. Obviously, the famous scene where they open the Ark of the Covenant and the one dude's face just melts.
Yeah.
That still looks really good and terrifying today,
Yeah.
by today's standards. The face melting.
Yeah.
But and
Yeah. There's nothing that doesn't work in them.
yeah,
Too.
like I mean, it's perfectly paced. Even I mean, like I said, it's almost amazing that like you've seen so much of so many things that have taken a bunch of influence on it of a movie that came out almost 40 years ago now. So much that has influenced it and parodied it and etc. Yet all the scenes still work.
Yeah.
And they all still go. I mean, it's still a lot of the quotes are still quotable.
Hmm.
The characters still work in it.
Yeah. Hmm.
I mean, there's also a lot of like really clever things, like they they know kind of how to do the thing. Like the guy burns his hand and he gets the inscription of
Yeah.
the thing, but he doesn't get both sides, and it's a two-sided thing.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting and clever in how they did that.
Hmm.
So they kind of know where it is. I mean, because that one, like just as a writing tool, that means the Nazis are in that area and searching for it, but they don't know where it is, so they're kind of scrambling to make it, which
Yeah.
also gives the main characters a chance to get in there and get that before they do. Uh, on them, but uh,
Hmm.
mhm,
Yeah. They they actually had a lot of trouble with filming.
mhm,
They had a lot of trouble with budget and everything.
yeah,
But obviously it all worked out in the end.
yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that like always interest me is like, I mean, at this point, like, obviously, George Lucas I mean, Spielberg had Jaws, he had Close Encounters. I don't know
Yeah.
if he had anything else. The next year, obviously, had E.T., because this was 81. But George Lucas obviously had Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back, I believe, came out next year.
Yeah.
Uh, so,
Well, the Empire State back had already. Spielberg also had Close Encounters.
yeah. Uh, so, like, and yet they still had issues with budget.
Yeah.
I mean, that's still kind of unbelievable on that. I mean, obviously afterwards, I don't think they did, but
Yeah.
you never know. But I mean, and sometimes I think sometimes that actually works for things because that means they can't do anything too crazy,
Yeah.
and they have to kind of know what they're doing when they shoot the thing, which usually ends up making it end up look good.
Yeah.
Because you can throw all the money you want, but some of the special effects will still look bad at the time they're doing it in.
But
Mm-hmm.
one of the problems was that their filming was on the desert,
Mm-hmm.
and at times the temperature was 130 degrees.
Yeah, you kind of can't shoot in those conditions.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Took them 73 days to shoot
yeah.
it.
So that's a pretty long shoot, I guess.
Yeah.
But mhm. I mean, uh, oh, I had something to say, but I'm blanking on it right
We,
now.
the visual effects was done by Industrial Light and Magic.
Yeah,
Lucas.
George Lucas's company. Uh huh.
Yeah.
Which I mean, they all look. We talked about this before, but they still look really good.
Yeah.
A lot of the action scenes are still really well done and shot. A lot of the stunt work is fantastic in it. Uh, Obviously, there's quite a bit of it. A lot of like car chase and motorcycle flips.
Yeah.
They have obviously fun with the environment in it. Um, uh, and one of the things is like you kind of look at the movies in their time period and stuff, and like even though it was like heavily influential and it's an 80s movie, It's not very similar to a lot of the 80s action movies because it's not kind of one guy running around and everybody gunning at him with machine guns and missing.
Yeah.
It's very much a lot of the like gunfighting is actually done in mostly an enclosed area
Hmm.
where there's a whole bunch of stuff surrounding them.
Yeah.
There's a whole. It's not a big open area like a lot of the times. It's a
Yeah.
or and it's very limited. And it's very limited. In that like you obviously have the gunfight in the bar, which is probably where most of the shooting takes place in the movie. And then they don't really do a huge amount of shootouts in it.
Yeah.
It's mostly chase scenes and fist fights.
Mhm. Yeah.
Hmm. And one of the things that I think works so well about the Indiana Jones character is that that he is still you believe he's an archaeologist
Yeah.
because he's much more interested. He's interested actually in the subject matter.
Yeah.
Uh, he um, he knows what he's talking about. He knows the myth, but he's interested in it, and he doesn't he's not in it for the profit or anything. He's in it because it belongs in museums and for the
Yeah.
which I think is which at the end obviously he wants to study the Ark,
Yeah.
and obviously they're locking it away as a weapon and stuff, which obviously that's one of the more famous scenes in the movie, but it
Yeah.
still really works
Yes.
because like when you think about it, it's also a very intimidating scene. That means
Yeah.
there's all this more stuff out there that is like the Ark of the Covenant and stuff.
Hmm.
And I realize that's kind of it's used in the fourth one, but not very well. But
Yeah. The one thing that sort of interested me, and I didn't realize it at the time I saw the first movie or so, the
hmm
Raiders of the Lost Ark poster
yeah,
has a picture of Indiana Jones
hmm
with a mustache. And
yes,
he only has the mustache at the beginning of the movie for the scenes in the cave and the rolling rock.
I didn't realize that. Uh,
And the rest of the movie, he is clean shaven. I was wondering whether they put out the poster just to make him different than Han Solo.
I wonder that too. Like that's interesting. And yeah, I mean, it actually kind of makes sense that he's clean shaven throughout the rest of the movie.
Yeah,
Because the other one, he's been in the jungle for a while and looking for the idol or whatever it is.
but you
Uh,
come back, he has a mustache at the
beard.
beginning,
Yeah.
and because I
hmm
when I saw it was sort of odd when I saw the poster
hmm
of the movie when we went to it this time. I thought, Jesus, I thought he was clean shaving. I didn't realize he had a mustache, and he doesn't really for most of the movie.
Yeah.
Uh, but then when you come back to the school,
hmm
he is, you know, clean shaving,
hmm
uh, has glasses, of course, as a professor.
Yeah.
But and in fact, I think the professor scene sort of gets it off really well because
hmm
it's sort of, as you said, a slapstick scene with the girl with her
Yeah.
eyes. Yeah,
Well, you have all the girls and stuff, and he's kind of oblivious to it.
yeah,
And I mean, and it works really well. What it works really well as a joke, but it
yeah,
also kind of shows where he's at. I mean, he
yeah,
does kind of have his head. I mean, he's very much into this,
yeah,
probably more so than he should be. He gets excited about it.
yeah,
Uh, I mean, he feels like he actually really cares about this subject, uh, which is in a lot of ways somewhat the opposite of Han Solo,
yeah,
in which he doesn't care. I
yeah.
mean, both characters are very much have like roguish elements and are somewhat anti-heroes.
Mhm.
Uh, but and they do share some similarities, but there's certainly a big difference between them.
Yeah,
I mean, they're almost two entire. They just share some similarities, and obviously, I mean, Lawrence Kasdan wrote, I believe, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi.
yeah,
I can't remember if he worked on the first one, but he obviously wrote this. Obviously, Spielberg. I mean, not Spielberg. George Lucas made the first couple Star Wars. Uh, John Williams scored them. Same. So there's obviously going to always be some similarities, probably, but because it's also the kind of characters they make.
yeah.
Uh,
He
and
wrote numerous. I mean,
yeah,
from he wrote The Big Chill, Body Heat,
Yeah,
Accidental Tourist, Grand Canyon,
yeah,
uh, and of course he wrote Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi,
yeah,
and The Force Awakens.
yeah. I mean,
And
he's obviously Lawrence Kasdan. He's done some bad stuff, but he's made some of the best movies of all time.
yeah,
Uh, he did that one awful Stephen King one with the uh, what is it? The one about the things that come out of the toilet.
yeah,
I'm blanking on it now, but it's terrible. Dreamcatcher,
yeah.
which is
Okay.
terrible, which is absolutely terrible. But uh,
He also
the
did. I
mhm,
mean, he's like Silverado
yeah,
and Accidental Tourist.
mhm,
I liked Grand Canyon a lot when I saw that.
mhm,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I mean, you're right. He did Dreamcatcher.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
no, I'm just saying. But yeah, no, obviously, I mean, he did Indiana Jones, and he did Indiana Jones, he did Empire Strikes Back and Indiana Jones in like 2 years. So after
yeah,
that, you're good for your life. You're a
yeah,
great writer.
yeah,
But it obviously both characters, Han Solo and Indiana Jones, harken back to the 30s and
yeah,
40s B movie heroes and stuff. So and the comic books and
yeah.
whatnot. Uh,
Well, that's sort of what Lucas wanted. He wanted
yeah,
to go back to the B hero
yeah,
comic books for Indiana Jones,
yeah.
and I think he did that well.
Oh
Just like
yeah.
he wanted to go to Star Wars to a you
Hmm.
know a space opera.
Yeah, kind of space opera, space western thing.
Yeah, yeah,
And no, there's no doubt that like um, it he did it well, or I mean he did fantastic. Like we said,
yeah.
this movie came out 40 years ago. It's still hugely influential, and it still holds up really well, and it's
Mhm.
still really entertaining to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't uh, you just don't really go wrong with it. Uh, I, uh, what was I gonna say? Mhm.
The yeah, it got nominated for best movie. Chariot of Fire won it that year.
This is better than Chariots of Fire.
Yeah, for sure.
But
Uh, and Warren Beatty won it for Reds. And I gotta say that I liked Reds. I thought it was one of the better movies,
mhm.
uh, considerably different from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, but
On
you're
Golden Pond was awesome, and one of the movies I really liked was Atlantic City that year.
yeah. I like Atlantic City a lot too. But I mean,
Yeah,
look, it's something that you're never gonna win Best Actor for, or
yeah,
uh,
no,
they don't get that for action movies or anything. You might get a supporting character, but I guess the only time maybe for what's it called, French Connection. But that's also a very different style of action movie and uh, thing.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, one of the things I like about the movie is it's also doesn't have it. It's not cynical at all,
no,
which a lot of these things seem to be anymore. They tend to be a bit cynical on the subject matter or like have a degree of distaste for it. Because I mean, that's one of the reasons Jurassic World. That's one of the reasons I really don't like that movie. Is it seems very cynical about the subject matter.
yeah,
I mean, there's a lot wrong with it other than that, but that was one of the things that always sat bad in my mouth. They kind of like, and they kind of sum it up really early on with like, oh, people aren't excited about dinosaurs anymore. What are you talking about?
yeah. I
Uh,
mean, it would be a great part, Jurassic World.
yeah. Uh,
Uh, I mean, the in fact, I think that I mean it would just be just a great park to see a Jurassic World park.
mhm, yeah.
Yeah,
No. Actually, I know one of the things we talked about is because we we're talking about like some of the Disney rides recently is why they never made an Indiana Jones ride at Disney World.
yes,
They obviously have the stage play in. I think it's called. It used to be called MGM. I don't know what it's called now.
yeah,
Uh, but they could definitely take like the minecart from the second film or something and do something
yeah,
with that, or
mhm,
just it. Uh, obviously, I guess we should talk about this for a little because they have the uh, fifth Indiana Jones movie coming out, I believe, in 2022.
Hmm.
Uh, James Manigold or Marigold or something is directing it, who did Logan,
Hmm.
Ford v Ferrari, and stuff. I'm
Yeah.
not sure who the writer is on it yet. I don't know if they've even announced that. With Spielberg producing, I don't know if George Lucas is producing. But I obviously Harrison Ford's still starring in it, and I'm still really excited for it, honestly.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
I think you have, I think James Marigold knows how to direct. I'm hoping they have Lawrence Kasdan write it,
Yeah.
but uh, we'll wait and see on that for the fourth one. Um,
Yeah, but it's scheduled for July of 2022, but you don't really know now anymore.
yeah, with COVID and stuff, we're not sure when they're
Yeah.
going to shoot it or anything, uh, but
Hmm.
mhm, we'll see. I guess.
It's still un still untitled,
Yeah.
and the Spielberg is producing it,
Hmm.
and
Yeah, I've heard a number. There's been a lot of rumors and stuff on it, but so I don't want to go too much into it. But I figured we might as well bring it up since we're talking about this one.
I
Uh,
don't think they got a writer for it
I'm sure they almost have to have a script for it, or if they're
yet.
going to release it in 2022, but
Yeah.
or at least the start of one. They just might not have announced it, or it's going through some revision still, or they're arguing over something. But who knows? Usually, I, I mean, like you said, this one had the three guys clashing on a number of things in it, so
Yeah.
that sometimes helps. It doesn't always, but uh, mhm. I don't know.
Mhm.
Is there anything much more you want to talk about with this one? Any scenes you want to go over, or
No, I don't. I don't believe so. I think we went over it real well.
yeah, I think so too. Again, both of us would highly recommend seeing it. If you've seen it before, see it again. Um, like I said, this was my first time experiencing it on a big screen, and I think the movie was meant to be shown on a big screen.
Yes.
It was a lot of. I had a lot of fun at the drive-in. I'd say probably my one complaint of being at a drive-in is I didn't have again the best sound because our radio, like I said, is a $30 radio that we use. We sat outside for it because it wasn't that cold out. So and the sound and the score, obviously. I mean, the score is iconic too, with another great John Williams score. But yeah, go see this movie. And I guess that's all we have to say. So again, if you're watching this on YouTube, please remember to like and subscribe, and hit us over at Twitch with the links in the description. Thank you, and have a nice day or night.